What is it that people are seeing? Is it a man? An animal? A myth? Or something else? Are they delusional? Are they lying? Some are pastors. Some are law enforcement. Some are military. If they are delusional liars, why do we trust them to lead us to God? To put people in jail? And to protect our way of life? Why are their words and actions good enough for that? But when it comes to experiencing something out of the ordinary, something fascinating, something possibly terrifying, they become a fool, a joke, an idiot. Not here. We are the BigDogT2B. Welcome to the show. Hello everyone, my name is Jack and welcome to the BigDogT2B. So today when I sat down to edit part 2 of my appearance on Chuck's show, I dropped over into the channel to see how part 1 was doing. So the video's been up for about 12 hours and we already have over 170 views and 9 comments. That's just crazy to me. The 9 comments, we have Jeremy Harrison, Morcaden, Carla Hipkins, Leon Mohan, Tim Egan, Barry Browning, Bobby and Tina S. Henderson. Bobby and Tina were nice enough to thank us and to tell us that they had binge watched all of our previous episodes. That's absolutely awesome. Everyone else replied pretty much with a common theme of, "Damn, you're back. Hey, it's nice to see you." And one particular comment states, and this is Tim Egan, "How long will I have to wait this broadcast of part 2 of this episode?" Taking that to heart, I went back and looked at the last video that we published, and that was July. We have a hard time getting together and putting out a video when things are going really well. But since July, we've had more than our set of bumps in the road. So shortly after publishing the last video, my oldest son, Joe, was injured in an on-the-job accident, shattering his heel and his wrist. He is still on disability today. Not long after that, Nate's house caught on fire. Luckily for Nate, his dog Cooper woke him up, and Nate and Cooper and his adopted dog that just wandered up and he gave her a home, calls her Black Dog, they were able to make it out of the home unscathed. That being the case, Nate's Uncle Harlan gave Nate a house. It was actually the house that Nate grew up in. It had been standing summarily vacant for a while, needed a little cleaning, and Nate wanted to do some remodeling. So me, Nate, and Nate's brother Chris got together, did a couple of days cleaning, and started doing some work inside the home. A few weeks after that, Nate came down with non-COVID influenza A and B. He went in the hospital for a week. He got out of the hospital approximately 3 weeks ago. And that brings us to today, just south of Huntsville, Alabama. And it is a balmy 17 degrees at 12:09 p.m. So in further editing, after listening to myself say all of that, I want to make sure that this message comes across the right way. It's hard to convey the appreciation that we have for the loyalty and patience of our listeners. And I shared what has happened over the last several months, not as a retort, but to say that life happens. And sometimes all at once. But we're going to have episode 2 up in a very timely manner. So in order to get these episodes out, what this requires is to go to the site, record the video in real time, dump it into the recording program, put on our front and rear bumpers, see what we can do about cleaning up the audio as much as we can, because remember, this is a recording of a recording of a recording, and then publish it. So enough of that. Let's get on with the show.
So there's that part.
Well, Jack,
I hope that wasn't boring. I hope that.
Oh no, I think it's fascinating. Well, Jack, let me ask you a question based off of what people have seen and experienced.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of sightings and encounters out there where you have what everybody calls a tree peeker. He may look around a tree at you, but that's all he does.
Mm-hmm.
And it even happens at night.
Now, what? Say that part again. Say that again.
That's all he does.
Okay. How did you describe that thing? That's all that it does. How did you describe it?
He just peeks around a tree and looks at you.
He just peeks around a tree and looks at you.
Yeah, I mean, you get
Did you say something about some kind of reference? Did you say some kind of reference about age in there?
No. No.
You didn't refer to it by any kind of age?
No.
Okay. So that kind of thing, take it into known animals, and I've seen deer do that. They'll come up and they'll peek around a tree, or they'll put their heads down really slowly and then pop their heads back up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
What is the motivator of that thing that's causing those animals to do that? Like, you take a 5-year-old that comes in and he peeks around the doorway. I'm out here with my dogs right now. Peeks around the doorway and sees the group of adults in the living room, and he only shows you one eye, and then he darts back around the corner. Now, I've seen deer do this. I've seen some younger bears do this. What is the motivator that is provoking that behavior?
Curiosity? Sizing you
one.
up?
There's two. Why are they going back behind the tree or back around the corner?
That's a good
question. Lack of confidence. Okay, they're scared. They're shy, which is just a different, to me, just a different flavor of scared. But it all wells back into a lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, that lack of confidence could be in its own physical abilities, if these things exist. It could be in a lack of confidence of, I'm here, there's something behind me that's more vulnerable than I am, so I don't need to make my presence known, but I'm going to keep an eye on you as much as I can and try not to draw full attention to myself, and I'm not going to step out and make the statement of, here I am, don't mess up. Right? Instead, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to keep the element of retreat as my primary. Because if you take and you move toward this deer, or you move towards this bear, or you move towards this child that's doing this peeking around the corner thing, what's their standard response?
Well,
run away.
Right.
And the only difference in behaviors in most animals, even including us, the only reason that the behavior changes many times between juvenile, adolescent, and adult is based in physical ability.
Yeah, that's true.
Physical ability changes our primary behaviors, because you take small things, right? And here's a good reference: Chihuahuas, right? Why are Chihuahuas this mean? I handle dogs. I can tell you that Chihuahuas bite probably hundreds of thousands of times a day, if not a million, and it never makes the news. Why?
Because they never kill anybody.
Exactly. They never never significantly harm anyone. And because they don't significantly harm anyone, right? They do this thing and that behavior changes. You take a little baby Chihuahua, they're not like that. But they stay at a point in size and relative to their environment where just about everything out there, if it gets hold of them, can eat them. So what do? They communicate and they bluff and they bring violence as quickly and as rapidly as they can once they're an adult in order to try to deter something from carrying them further down the physical avenue in which they cannot compete.
Makes sense.
But you take a puppy of the same size, it is absolutely positively not in their nature to do that thing. But as they grow older, their behaviors change, but they don't take on the persona of the Chihuahua. Why? Because their physical abilities increase, unlike the Chihuahua. The Chihuahua stays small. Their physical abilities increase, and they will escalate that force even within their own pack, and they will do it in a way that is much less intrusive, much less. Their cost-benefit analysis equation starts from a different place than that of a Chihuahua, even though they're the same species of animal.
Right.
Living in the same basic social structure. Did that go too far, too fast? Did that follow? Did that flow?
No, it flowed. I understood. So,
okay.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So if you have a tree picker, that's something that is either, in my opinion, if it exists, is something that is either not confident in its own abilities to handle what it is observing, or it is apprehensive in trying to provide a buffer zone in between itself, what it's observing, and something that is behind it that is not capable of handling what the thing in the middle is observing. That was kind of abstract. I hope that came across right. You know, if you watch wild dogs or coyotes or wolves or something like that in a den, that wolf will go out from the den and it will circle so far, and if there's something out there that's bad, it generally doesn't run away from it directly. It'll stop, it'll stay out of sight, it'll observe it. And many times, if it is noticed, that thing that has the pup that has the young, if it's noticed, it will do its best to lead that thing in a different direction away from the den, to take it out there somewhere and lose it, and then try and return it to the den to maintain survivability of the young.
Well, Jack, let's switch gears, I guess, in the sense of you want to talk about what we've started and maybe some of the results of what we have?
Sure. So, you know, like I said, I'm not a believer and why I'm not a believer, but I have had many things happen across my life that I can't explain. And several years ago, with advent of the internet, and you know, people that can remain anonymous and come out and talk and not face the direct ridicule of, you know, you lost your mind. What are you smoking? You know, did you see Elvis too? You know, that whole thing. There's a lot of, I believe the term is anecdotal. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence or folklore, word of mouth stuff that people are expressing and bringing into the world. And when you listen to that stuff, and I believe it was somebody, one of the early curators of the Smithsonian, or somebody attached to one of the national museums, that said, in paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me, either this is the largest worldwide, well-orchestrated hoax spanning hundreds of years, or there's an unknown primate in North America, just based on the anecdotal information. But that's all it is, right? You've got a few websites out there dedicated basically to entertainment, and not throwing barbs at you. You entertain people, right? You give people a platform where they can come out and they can say, hey, this happened to me, and this is what I think. And, you know, my buddy Nate, you know, I met him, and, well, actually I got his contact information off of another podcast. I didn't contact the podcaster, I contacted Nate. And I contacted that because of some of the the ethics and morals things that I heard him and other people say about him and their interaction with him that told me that this guy may be okay. And it's turned out so far that he is absolutely much more than okay. I would count him as one of my best friends in the world right now, along with yourself.
A great guy.
But yes, in one of the statements he said one time, and he said it on several podcasts, is nobody out there knows a thimble's worth of information about these things. He's absolutely right. But basically, we have 10,000 thimbles of information sitting around the United States, let's say. 10,000 sightings. There's probably a lot more than that. What if you poured all 10,000 of those thimbles in together? That would be something pretty significant. All right? That would be something that you could that you could understand, that you could look at, that you may be able to make observations on, and then based on those observations you could make hypotheses, and from those hypotheses you could make assumptions, and you could hold experiments, and you could act accordingly. So from that, talking to Nate, and I'd actually been thinking about that for years, and Nate had been thinking about that for years, and Nate was in contact with several different groups. Nate was actually the one that told me that I should contact you, and so I did. And during the course of this thing, I came up with a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is basic information, and this is analytical, right? When you talk about analytics, statistics, that kind of thing, right? You've got two basic things associated with that. One is called qualitative, right? Qualitative is kind of like the one website out there that has a TV program that goes out and never finds a damn thing, right?
Right.
Their website and that information there would be called qualitative because it's how well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an open-ended question. What happened? And then anything after that, you have to go in, look at common things that occur to that, assign a code or a common word commonality in between them, and then see how often that kind of thing does that as you go and you digest all of that text, and you say, okay, we'll say color. This one said brown. Okay, that one said black. Okay, this one said brown. This one said gray. This one said brown. This one said gray. This one said brown. This one said brown. This one said black. This one said gray. Well, you've got a more high likelihood based upon that of citing something or looking for a brown color, brown, red, auburn in the woods, and that should be the primary color that you look for in the woods to stand out against the environment if you're going out to look for this kind of thing. Make sense? And that's how you take qualitative, which is basically just an expression of random words, into quantitative, which is something where you can count, you can get a quantity, and from that assign a value to a thing. Did that go too fast?
No, I got it.
Okay. So in quantitative, if you want to, all right. So this database, in order to go from a qualitative to a quantitative thing, you have to limit the number of responses that way, and you have to clearly define the responses so that you can count them. Right? And if you can count them, you can come up with a basic probability or how things occur, you can trend them out. Right?
Right.
So when we look at the way that this questionnaire that we now have online, the name of the group is called BigDogT as in Tango, 2 as in number 2, B as in Bravo, BigDogT2B, which stands for Bigfoot Dogman Tracking and Trending the Beasts. This is the way that we are trending the beasts. So when we look at how the questionnaire is laid out, the first one is type, right? And that's basically, what did you see, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or Dogman? The next question area is basically refers to cover, right? Was it dense cover or was it open? The next question area is terrain. There's probably 8 or 12 responses in there, something like that, revolving around mountains, hill country, boulder field, flatlands, swamp or river bottom, front, back, side yard, road crossing, etc. The next questioning area refers to population density, and that's urban and rural, and we have some relatively clear definitions. I think it's houses greater than, for rural, it's houses are greater than 200 feet apart, or 200 yards apart. I have to get exact guys. So the next question area is distance to water. Right. We have unknown for several of the options, just in case you don't know, or it was too traumatizing, something of that nature. Time of day, we've basically broken time of day responses up into midnight to 6 in the morning, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which basically equates to a daytime sighting, or 6 p.m. to midnight. And we go from there, and we've got weather and temperature and visual, and once you get to visual, we break the visual down into posture, which is basically how it's standing, physique, what did it look like physically, color, cleanliness, sex, age, and nature. And by nature, that moves into more human, more animal. And that takes us about a third of the way into the questionnaire. There are a lot more questions in there. And there are a lot of questions for a couple of reasons. One is to be able to get more specific information. Two is to keep out the trolls. Right? You have to really want to go in and fill this thing out. And it's just a go through, it's a click button kind of thing. And you go through and you say, hey, this is all the stuff. And at the end, if you want to, there's a question in there, hey, is there something we didn't think to ask? Or is there a response to one of the questions that we didn't think to add? That's a place where you can type in. And if you really want to tell us what happened, right, what you experienced, you want to write that stuff down, there's an area where you can do that too. So we can provide that information to local people, maybe to come out and help if you're having problems, or if you want to get in touch with a podcaster such as yourself, you can forward that information and get you in touch with a podcaster. And you know several, we know several.
Right.
If they have a request for a specific one, we'll try and get them in contact with that one. But as far as results go, we can look at some real quick results. This is based upon just under 110 responses so far. Out of 110 responses, 97% of the responses were Bigfoot Sasquatch. So if you're going to see something, the probability of seeing something is a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, at least based upon the reports that we have now. Cover, dense cover, is the higher response. It's 60% of those responses. Terrain, which is an oddity, the highest response in terrain, which is 28% of all responses, is front, back, or side yard, which says a couple of things as you start to interpret or extrapolate the data and associate the other questions. Right. One, it takes two things to have a Bigfoot sighting. One of the guys on one of the TV shows said this one time. It takes a human being, it takes a Bigfoot. Right. So the fact that it happens near front, back, or side yard, near someone's home, that's not that surprising. Mm-hmm. But I would have thought that it would not be as prevalent as it is right up front, especially in the early stages of the data that we're in right now. Urban and rural, 63% of the reports we have occurred in rural areas. And that is, the basic definitions we provide in there is forest, farmland, low population density areas, homes greater than, I think it's 200 feet, not closer than 200 feet together. Mm-hmm. From there, distance to water, which is not surprising, but now we can say that we know. Right? We're not guessing anymore. 43% of the reports that we have now listing distance to water is less than 100 feet. Right? All mammals have to drink. All living things are 90+% right. Water. So it's not really surprising that it's near water, or that if you are that near water, that your probability of the sighting goes up. The next probability of the sighting for water is 100 to 500 feet at 29%. Then we get 14% at less than half a mile, and no responses for sightings greater than 3 miles are greater than a half a mile from water, right? So if you've got a Bigfoot researcher that's researching greater than a half a mile from water, chances are they're not going to find much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense.
Based upon the report, based upon the reports as written, and you would say, and I'm a trainer by profession and have been for a lot of years, right? One-on-one training, small group training up to groups of 200. The enemy of common practice is common knowledge, right? Well, everybody knows that. Yep, but how many times have you gone out and done Bigfoot research? Or Bigfoot researcher, how many times have you been greater than a half a mile away from water looking for Bigfoot? We several.
Yeah, there's been several times.
Several at greater than a half a mile. But if you look at the data says that if you are looking for it outside of more than half a mile away from water, your odds drop exponentially.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the way that this kind of data can be used. Let's say that you're buying a house and that you're scared to death of these things. Well, buy a house that's, over a mile or 2 miles away from water. You shouldn't have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not relatively based on the data. But if you want to find them, if you want to see them, yep. Stay less than 500 feet from water and walk that line. High probability.
Right.
Temperature, which we get data in there, but extrapolating the data out of the data because the format initially was fill in the blank and not a drop down calendar. I've got all kind of different date formats in there, and trying to get that stuff to parse out is challenging. But 41% of the sightings happen at a temperature of over 70 degrees. And this pulls in the point of looking at the data. Is that above 70 degrees a human characteristic, or is it the animal's characteristic? I believe that the animal probably doesn't care too much about the temperature, but I believe that human activity is probably highest in the wild, off trail, above 70 degrees.
Right.
And I would say that it's a human behavior also, because sightings below freezing amount to 3% of the sightings as reported. So in doing this thing, we've had all of these people, and one of the things that just kills me about this stuff, and you go and you watch and you listen to some of these conferences, and you watch and you listen to some of these, not yourself, but you listen to these podcasters, and you watch and you listen to some of these documentaries. They'll even go on TV, on national television, their own show, and do this stuff, and they will tear each other apart. Nope, that person's an idiot. What are they thinking? I know what I'm talking about because I am this, right? But we can take it with this kind of information, and we can put all of that garbage to bed.
Right.
And we can say, basically, at that point, okay, if that's what you think and that's what you experienced, that is extremely rare.
Right.
Or if that's what you think and that's what you experienced, yeah, that pretty much falls in accordance with baseline. Yeah, gotcha. Right. And then one of the questions, because I don't want personally identifying information here, and I don't want somebody showing up at your home. I don't want somebody showing up where you work. If you're that person that goes out and does research, I don't want somebody showing up at your research area. I don't want them knowing who you are.
Right.
So we ask for a name to call someone, a pseudonym, right, a fictitious name, and we don't want the address. What we want is the zip code, right? The zip code will put you in a not too small, not too large area. And once we have more reports, right, and where we can warrant shifting from what we have now, which is basically a pivot table based Excel information and charts and diagrams and stuff, right? So going to a real database, because a real database, and I can do it in Excel, but let's say that I want to see all the responses because we've got, people were scared, right? And you say, okay, I want to see all the people that answered yes, they were scared, and I want to see how many of those people I want to look at that, and I want to look at that versus terrain, and I want to see how many people were, at home, basically answered front, back, side, yard, and see how many of those people were scared.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus, how many people that were out there in the mountains were scared. Which would say basically, hey, we were rural. We were out of way.
Right.
And look at those and say, okay, proportionally, how many of the people that said they were in the mountains said they were scared? How many people that said they were scared were at home, right? And you can put that stuff in a database and run queries on the database and bring those things into a smaller set of data so that you can start looking at things, and then we can say, okay, I want to see this zip code plus these associated zip codes, right, so that I get a region, right? I'm going hunting in this region. I want to know this region plus these zip codes about, what are the behaviors there, right? If I encounter something and it's going to do something to scare me, what kind of behavior can I expect? Well, I can expect it to growl, and I can expect it to grow things. Well, if you go over to this area, you can not expect it to growl or throw things. You can expect it to start right off the rip charging at you, right?
Right.
So once we get that much information in there, then we can start to, extrapolate all that, get all that stuff into a model where we can say and bring the temperature and time of year into it, and say, okay, well, this region between this date and this date are the primary encounters, and it happens in hill country near boulder fields at around this temperature, and we need to be trying to spot this primary color, and it should be about this tall, and it should respond more human, or it should respond more animalistic, whatever that thing is, right? So that you can look at the thing as far as a historical model, and from a historical model, come out with a predictive model.
Right.
Did that go too fast?
No.
Okay.
No, and since I've gotten involved, and I just want to thank you and Nate both for getting me involved in this project. And since I've gotten involved, and I've seen the questions, and I've filled out a couple of my own reports on there,
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say that for people who are interested in maybe putting in a report, one of the greatest aspects of it, I think, is the fact that you can remain anonymous. You don't have to put your real name on there. You can just make up a name if you want to. But
yep.
But you also.
But it is laborious enough to keep people from just going through there and saying, "Hey, click happy, bing, 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 bing."
Right.
So it's going to take you a minute, even if it's click happy, to answer it with the rules that are there to get to the end of it and hit submit. Right, that's going to take some effort, more than what the typical troll. But we do give a place in there for you to submit your email address.
Right.
If you would like somebody to contact you. Right, and we've contacted several people.
Right.
That have, hey, this is what happened, and I talked to this one lady, just a lovely lady. I mean, she's just a pistol in it. She was awesome.
Yeah,
but
I think I know who you're talking about.
She was very, very scared, very, very intimidated when the thing happened. And over time, she had looked into things and done some of her own research, and had basically come to the conclusion that as close as the thing was, if it exists, I'd say that. I'm not calling her a liar. I'm just saying I wasn't there to see it. Right? As close as she was, if there was a wild animal that close to you, that big, with that physical capability, if it wanted you, if it had, okay, it had you, if it wanted you.
Right.
So it didn't want you, and the proof of that pudding is that you are here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So while you take most animals, Most animals don't want a physical confrontation with you unless they're going to consume you, or you are trying to consume them or take something from them.
Right.
And you weren't doing any of that. So it didn't want to consume you, so it didn't push the physical confrontation. What it did do was scream at you. And what did that cause? That caused you to flee, which was likely its primary intent.
Right.
Right?
Wanted
The
you out of there.
communication, nonverbal, the nonverbal communication worked.
Right.
It probably also wanted you never to come back. So what did it do? It screamed at you incessantly, and it pursued you for a very short period of time, just to make sure that you weren't going to do what dogs do a lot of times, which is they look and they run 3 steps and they stop and they come back.
Yeah.
That is a common painted, particularly in coyotes and wolves, between dominant and subordinate members within their own pack. And what did it do? It showed the same like behavior. Right? It drove her off for a distance far enough for it to say, yep, you're not going to stop and turn around and come back, even though they had to. They had to go make a big loop and come back through there to get out. Right?
Right.
But they were coming through there hard and fast enough. I don't think that it had any question as to whether or not they were going to stop. But anyway, after talking for a while, and she had PTSD, even though they didn't call it that back then, and she had been primarily over it, having someone that would listen to her, give her an unbiased, unjudgmental opinion of, okay, this is animal behavior, and this is the way that animals behave. This is the primary motivator behind this type of communication, and this primary motivator is aimed at this primary objective. And if it achieves its objective with the lower level non-intrusive communication, it never moves on to the higher level, more aggressive communication. So it achieved its objective.
And something about that, if you think about that and its behavior, number one, he's probably used that behavior before, and number two, because it was successful, he's going to use it again.
Yeah, and you take that, and that's that behavior with us. But this communication, this is their primary communication model. They communicate with every living, sentient thing in their environment. They use this same communication model.
Right.
Dogs can communicate with cats. Rabbits can communicate with deer. Deer can communicate with dogs. Dogs with deer. Deer with horses. They all have this communication. And that's why I say, because you watch and you go on YouTube, you can find all kinds of videos of these animals communicating, getting together, playing, running each other off. They will communicate by touching. They will communicate, at a distance. And the sender gets its message across to the receiver. Eventually, one way or the other. Right?
Right.
So this is the way that they communicate all the time. It's our intellect that has suppressed our ability to appropriately interpret that communication. Right? And our intellect that has driven out the alpha response in human beings. Right?
It
says, okay, get over it. Get over it. I've got a life to live. Right? All right, I got you. I'm not your I'm not your female dog person.
Right.
I got you. I'm going to back up slowly. I respect you. I don't necessarily trust you, but I know that you want me to leave, and now I'm leaving. I've moved far away from you to say that I'm not food and that I respect you, but now I'm going to turn around slowly, and I'm going to leave, not in a hurry, because I don't want to entice you into thinking that I am so scared and that my physical abilities are less than what they are, so that you will now think that I am something that's easily defeated and or eaten, so that you will now run me down and consider me prey.
Yeah, that's right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And that they communicate with that all day, every day. It's just our intellect that has driven it out of us to where we don't consider that as primary communication.
Right.
Right. We don't receive that stimulus of loud noises, overbearing postures, being eyeballed, things like that. The bulk of civilization today receives their input through a screen that doesn't have any sight or changing, any smell or any change in temperature, and they can experience any level of social interaction, competition, adventure, anything like that, without ever having been in any point of vulnerability. So that if vulnerability occurs in any way whatsoever, right, that by and large we are not mentally, emotionally, in today's generations, prepared to handle that kind of thing.
Right.
All of that stuff I call things from Jack's book of nice but useless things.
Yes.
It's a big book.
Yes, it is. Send me a copy. Well, Jack,
No, it's not written.
We've had a really good talk and a really good show here, and I think people are going to enjoy it pretty much. And I think now is a good time to give you a little crap. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this publicly, so everybody can get a laugh out of this. All right. You wrote,
now I'm proficient as well.
I know you are. I've had my experiences with you. Okay. So.
Okay. Here we go. Verbal ping pong.
Yes, sir. So here we go. You wrote this report for your last college essay, and I read it, and it was extraordinary. You've had things happen to you that were strange, that were not characteristic of anything that you really knew. You had this childhood experience that was, kind of off the cuff, so to speak. Okay, and we're doing this questionnaire now, and without saying where you live, a lot of the characteristics of the sightings that have taken place happen around the same type of area that you live in. Did you notice that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, with all that being said, how come you're not a believer?
because it's part of, I think I said it way up front, right?
Yeah.
I have a problem with the abstract when it comes to things like this.
Right.
And I have, and you look at all of these things that I've observed and that I know the characteristics of, and, people would say, like I told you about the thing that happened here around the house, where out the field behind the house, when I first caught eye shine on this thing, I had the impression that I was looking down at it. And as it came up, I went from the impression of looking down at it at about 60, 80 yards to the impression of looking up at it. Right? Now, you have people in that community say, "Oh, that's a Bigfoot right there." And I say, no. What I can clinically say is I had eye shine at 60 to 80 yards. When I first saw it, my perception says that it was somewhere around knee high. Over the course of about 2 seconds, 3 seconds, it went from my perspective of being knee high to being about 1.5 feet, 2 feet over my head. Why do I say that? Why do I say that that's what it was? 1, it was 60 to 80 yards from me. 2, it was at night. 3, I had a really decent mag light, but the night was a night with heavy mist and bright moonlight. I saw mist. I never saw the shape of anything, right? And then as I'm looking at this thing, something which is very uncommon for animals in North America, unless it's some kind of predator, and there's not predators in this part of the country that will openly aggress humans. Call Katie here. That will openly aggress humans while I'm looking at this thing out in front of me, something approaches me from my right, basically flanking me. At that point, I backed up slowly and called it a night. Did I see Bigfoot? Did I see Dogman? No. I saw eye shine that made a transition from somewhere around 2 feet above ground, somewhere around 7+ feet above ground, 7, 8 feet above ground. That's what I saw. Right? I had something with me and my son. I was his designated driver. Cross the road in front of us, not too far from here. And it was just, all I can say is it was an anomaly. If you took the shape of an owl and you made it 3 times as big as me, right? And it's an owl that's flying with the wingtips down, right? And you're looking at it from a profile, right? The tail is level with the beak horizontally, right? If you take that shape with those wings that they're wide like that, and you tip that thing up at about 50 degrees, so it's closer to 90 degrees than it is 0 degrees, right? Not 45 degrees, past 45 degrees. If you took that and you moved that shape horizontally across the road at about 200 yards, quartering away from you, and crossing at a bend of the road, because where it crossed the road, there's a sharp bend to the left there, and just below that is a river. That's what I saw. Like, I saw that shape cross the road in that way. Owls don't fly that way. Have you ever seen an owl with its head up in the air, basically, and its wingtips pointed straight out in front of it, so that its wingtips come from kind of low to straight out in front of it, move horizontally 20 feet? That way. Nope. They might do that when they're coming to pitch or coming to grab something, right? They'll come in and they'll take their wings and they'll backpedal to throw their tail down and throw their feet down, and their feet will grab a hold of something, or they'll land, and then they'll transition from that to bringing their head back down so that they can get their wings to the point to where they're creating lift again.
Right.
So to get that thing to move horizontally 20 feet-ish without showing a wing beat in a way that doesn't create any lift, that's what I saw. Did I see Bigfoot? No, I didn't. Again, it was night, relatively heavy mist. I drive Jeeps. They've got relatively bright lights on them. And I saw this gray thing cross the road, quartering away from me, that looked like that. I've never had that thing, like I said, where I can say, but like I've done with most other animals, you know, watch them breathe, watch them blink, watch them eat, watch them take a dump, you know, bears, you know, have them pop their teeth at me. Other animals have them snort at me. I've been in tree stands. I've had squirrels jump on me and then just raise Cain because it freaked out because, you know, I didn't feel like what they should have landed on or whatever. You know, have them sit there and cuss me out from 12 feet.
Right. After
having jumped on my stand or jumped on me, you know, watch them interact. You know, one year I use raccoon as a cover scent. And one year I think I got the raccoon cover scent of a raccoon that was in heat because I had raccoons, little boar raccoons, tracking me to my stand. Right. So I get, you know, and I had that bottle of cover scent because I watered it down with distilled water. You know, I had that bottle of cover scent for 2 years, so I got, you know, I got some pretty significant observation on raccoons, you know, and raccoon behavior. Why? Because I had them come to my tree, come up the tree after me.
Yeah.
You know, sit there and unknock my arrow and reach over my stand and start tapping on the side of the tree, you know, not trying to tell the world that I'm there, but telling the raccoon, hey, listen, I'm not your date. Go somewhere else.
Right.
So.
Well, what about the daylight picture that you took of the one peeking around a tree at you off in the distance?
Oh, you're talking about the Cookie Monster one?
Yeah, that one.
The one I call the Cookie Monster?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is another thing that's just an anomaly, because this house sits in the middle of 61 acres. And from the deck where I took the picture to the tree line is about 110, 120 yards, something like that. And then this thing was another 15 yards, maybe 20 yards into the wood line. And I can go look at the properties on the picture and come up with the date. But I turn location off on my phone so the pictures don't get a geotag. Katie, here.
Yes, sir. Oh,
And
I thought you said, "Can you hear?"
so that's Katie, my dog. Just talking to Katie. My dog's out there sniffing things as if she is going to do other activities. She's communicating non-verbally.
Mm-hmm.
It says she's about to do something stupid. Katie, here. Good girl. Here. So I look out there in the woods, and there's just something there that doesn't belong. And I've sent you several pictures where, you know, I just take random pictures, and then I forget about them for a couple of years or a year. But something doesn't belong, and I just, you know, take my phone out and I start poking my phone in the face and messing with it for a couple of seconds. I get the camera up and get it zoomed a little bit, and then I turn around and I just pop off, you know, 3, 4, 5 pictures, put the phone back in my pocket and go on about my business. And so what I can say of what I saw, right, is I saw something there that didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
Right, there was something there out of place. At that distance, I couldn't tell what it was. So I took a picture of it, stuck the phone in my pocket, and looked at the phone for weeks. Look back, you know, 15 minutes later, whatever the thing that was there that didn't belong is gone. And what do I have in that picture? Something that looks like the Cookie Monster with no pupils. Can I say that that's Bigfoot? Nope. Why? Because pareidolia and parallax in pictures, and even in our perception, right, of how we judge distance and the way that we assign the flash recognition of what we see is real, right? What did I get? I got something that looked like a Cookie Monster.
Okay.
You know, the thing that I sent you the pictures of from across the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was taking that video, I didn't see them.
Right.
You know, I'm just sitting there kind of panning around with my camera, and that was, you know, September 2017. And I really didn't look at any of this stuff until after I contacted Nate, which was just like November, December last year. So, you know, the picture that I sent you from when we were house hunting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was to walk up to someone and I was to show them that picture and say, "Hey, I took this picture in the Congo. What do you think?" They'd say, "Oh, that's awesome. You know, how close were you? Blah, 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 blah." But if I look at them and I tell them, "Hey, I took this picture 30 miles from here. What do you think?" They'll look at it and say, "Oh, that's just blah."
Yep, that's correct.
So, you know, where do you go with that? You know?
Yeah. Well, I can understand where you're coming from. I just think you've experienced so many things, found some things, and wow. I just am amazed that you still doubt what you saw. But that, you know, that's okay. I'll leave it at that. You need to come to Oklahoma, and we'll take you out there, and there won't be any denying what you see. So, you need to make the trip.
You know, how many things have you seen that where you really believe it that turned out to be just absolutely positively false?
Several.
Happens all the time.
Right.
Right. Our minds working a flash photography particularly as we're scanning things, where we take something that we see and we throw it into a category of what the known world is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you can use that in the opposite direction too, right? Like my wife didn't believe we'd be riding down the interstate or something like that, and I'd look out the window into the forest, and say, oh, there's a deer right there. There's no. And she's like, oh, you're crazy. Finally, one day I stopped, made a U-turn, came back around, pulled off the side of the road. I said, look out there in those trees, about 40, 50 yards. Look for a little white dot that's moving. And it was an ear twitch off the deer. And I didn't see the ear twitch off the deer, skirting down the highway at, 60, 70 miles an hour. What I did is I set my flash photography differently.
Mm-hmm.
And my flash photography for hunting and for doing that thing and spotting animals, four-footed animals in particular, is that vegetation, flora, is vertical. Four-footed animals, their back is horizontal. If you have an intersecting line at less than 5 feet that's flat horizontal above the ground, and it is of a particular color, right? Because your mind works like a piece of graph paper. If you don't believe that, the next time you paint your house and you use a roller, paint it a 45-degree angle across the wall and you won't see the lines. But if you paint up and down or side to side, you'll definitely see them. Right? So I set my vision like that, and then I look as far back into the forest as I can, and anything that intersects like that between me and as far back as I can see, I can snap on that real fast and look at it and say, ooh, that's a deer. Ooh, that's a bear. Right? Bears are a little different. Their back's a little more round. And the flash photography for recognition on them is basically absence of light. They're black, like light doesn't exist where they are.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare that to the vegetation. You see something that's much blacker than all of the shadows, chances are, you've spotted a bear if you're in bear country.
Right.
Anyway, like I said, more things from Jack's book of nice but primarily useless things to know.
Well, Jack, this has been great, man, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's an honor to have you on here, man. You want to give out the web address one more time for people who might be interested in checking out the questionnaire or just checking out the page?
Yeah, it's on. Right now, we don't have enough input to substantiate a website yet.
Okay.
And it's basically a clickable link that we've provided to you and just a couple of other people.
Right.
So my advice would be to go to your Facebook page where you have it provided, and it'll just take you from there to Survey Planet, and you can go through there and fill out the survey.
Okay.
Like I said, putting your email address in there is optional. But if you want to be contacted, if you would just like to call somebody and talk to them the way that, you and I have been talking tonight. If you just like somebody to talk to that's not going to say, "Bye, what are you smoking?"
Right.
Did you see Elvis? Whatever. That's not going to be that person.
Right.
Or you'd like some advice because you got something going on around your place that you're tired of dealing with. Nate's had some significant experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so have several other people that we have. We don't have personally with us right now someone in every state, but we have contacts that we can probably reach every state in the United States plus several countries worldwide.
Well, folks, if you're interested,
put your email address in there if you want somebody to call you.
Yeah, and folks, if you're interested in checking out the survey and answering the survey, my site is on Facebook is OK Bigfoot Chasing the Beast, and you're more than welcome to get on there and fill out a survey, and plus, leave some comments underneath when you exit out of the survey and tell us what you thought of it. We appreciate that kind of input. So, well, as always, if someone has had an encounter or a sighting and would like to tell us your story, you can reach us at caschlabs@icloud.com. And as always, you folks have a great night.
So this concludes my first ever podcast appearance on OK Chasing the Beast with host Chuck Slabs. It's not really a Bigfoot story, but if you stayed this long, hopefully you found it interesting. On a positive note, I have already recorded the next show that we're going to upload, where Nate and I appear on Chuck's show. Hopefully I will get the first half edited today, so I can post part 1 tomorrow, which is Christmas. As always, if you decide to step off the pavement, if you decide to step off the trail, and get back into places where people normally don't go, you need to be mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared for what you may encounter. Take care. God bless. We love you. And until next time, have a great day.